banks of the Rhine, German observers saw American tanks gathering in the distance. They heard engines moving in the dark. They intercepted radio traffic from entire divisions, massing for an attack. But the tanks were rubber. The engines were speakers hidden in trucks, and the army they feared did not exist. In 1944, a secret American unit was given an order that sounded almost impossible. Convince them that a few trucks were a tank division. Convince them that an empty field held thousands of waiting soldiers. If they succeeded, real combat units elsewhere could move, attack, or escape unnoticed. If they were discovered, the risk was severe. Picture a muddy field in France, just after dark. A handful of soldiers strain against something heavy until it lifts and unfolds and takes shape. A Sherman tank, or so it appears. It's rubber, 93 pounds. 2 men can carry it, and from a few hundred yards away, through binoculars, this idea didn't start in France. It began in North Africa in 1942, where British forces had used dummy tanks and forced movements to help disguise their true plans from German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. 2 American planners, Billy Harris and Ralph Ingersoll, believed the same trick could be scaled up, not just for one battle, but across an entire military campaign. On January 20th, 1944, the War Department activated a unit built entirely around that idea. Its official name was dry and easy to forget: the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The men inside it would come to know it by a very different name: the Ghost Army. Around 1,100 men filled its ranks, and almost none of them were chosen for combat skill. They came from art schools, advertising firms, and theater companies. In civilian life, they had painted, designed sets, drafted blueprints, and performed on stage. Their commanding officer, Colonel Harry L. Reeder, was handed an unusual task: turn artists and set designers into battlefield illusionists. Their tools looked more like a theater's prop room than an army's arsenal. Inflatable tanks and trucks, recorded engine noise played through massive speakers, fabricated radio scripts, canvas dummies of artillery. But this was not theater with a safety net. It included armed engineers and security troops to protect the unit, and it operated inside a real war, where the enemy's shells did not care whether the target was real steel or painted rubber. Their entire method depended on being seen, on being loud, visible, and convincing. Stealth was the opposite of their job. They had to drive into towns wearing another unit's insignia, talk carelessly in cafes, letting rumors spread to anyone who might be listening, broadcast fake radio traffic on open channels, daring the enemy to intercept it. Each of these choices carried real risk. If German intelligence ever pieced together what they were seeing, impersonation, false signals, a hoax dressed as an army, the consequences for the men involved could be severe. They weren't hiding from the war. They were operating close enough to the front lines to be shelled, close enough to be captured, close enough for the lie to collapse in an instant. For weeks after the D-Day landings, the unit was sent into Normandy. Some troops simulated a fake harbor structure at night with lights, hoping to draw German artillery away from the real supply harbor the Allies depended on. The Ghost Army was then ordered to help contain German forces holding out in the port city of Brest, simulating a far larger encircling force than actually surrounded the city. It was the first time they combined visual, radio, and sonic deception together in a single operation, and one of the rare times the unit found itself inside a major battle. The illusion helped draw attention and tie down defenders, though it did not, on its own, force a quick surrender. Brest remained a hard, costly fight for the real combat troops involved. One soldier, Corporal Jack Macy, later called it the most intense action he witnessed in the entire war. September 1944, the stakes climbed higher. Based in Luxembourg, the Ghost Army was ordered into Operation Besenbourg, and told to hold a stretch of front line more than 20 miles long, not defend it with tanks, not defend it with real infantry in force, defend it with sound trucks, with false radio chatter between headquarters that didn't exist, with rubber vehicles arranged just visibly enough to be noticed from a distance. For over a week, this illusion stood between the enemy and a genuinely undermanned section of the Third Army's line. Somewhere across that stretch, a German officer studied a map, weighing whether to push forward. If he had ordered an attack, if he had tested that line with real force, the illusion would have shattered within minutes, and the undermanned troops behind it would have been badly exposed. He didn't attack. Operations Officer Colonel Clifford Simonson later called it a turning point, the first mission the unit executed, in his words, fully professionally and correctly. By early 1945, deception had become second nature to the unit. Soldiers wore the insignia of real combat divisions, let rumors slip in local cafes, and ran fabricated radio exchanges between Phantom headquarters, all while German listening posts recorded every word as fact. Then came their most demanding assignment of the war. In March 1945, as the Allies prepared to cross the Rhine River into Germany itself, the Ghost Army was ordered to impersonate two entire divisions, roughly 40,000 soldiers, positioned far from the real crossing point. The mission was called Operation Viersen. More than 600 dummy vehicles were inflated. False radio traffic filled the air. Speakers played recordings of pontoon bridges being built, hour after hour, through the night. According to the unit's own official history, this deception materially assisted in convincing the enemy that the true crossing lay somewhere else entirely. German observers watched what looked like a massive American buildup, engines rumbling from hidden speakers, radio traffic moving between units that existed only on paper, rows of rubber tanks catching just enough light to look real through binoculars. 10 miles away, the actual 9th Army prepared to cross the Rhine at the true point of attack. The deception is credited with helping the attack come as a surprise. The enemy's attention, and very likely some of their available strength, was drawn toward a battle that was never going to happen. For men who had never fired a shot at the enemy in anger, this was the moment their illusion mattered most. Aftermath, the war in Europe ended weeks later. The unit returned to the United States in July 1945 and was deactivated that September after Japan's surrender. Then their story vanished. The mission stayed classified for more than 50 years until 1996. Soldiers went home, married, raised children, and worked ordinary jobs, never once telling their own families what they had actually done in the war. One veteran later recalled that General Eisenhower's letter of thanks to the unit ended with a pointed postscript. If they told anyone, he would see that they hanged. Historians estimate the deceptions may have saved somewhere between 15,000 and 30,000 American lives, though, like much of this story, an exact number can never be fully confirmed. That success came at a real cost. Multiple soldiers from the unit were killed, and dozens more were wounded, carrying out missions where the illusion itself was the battlefield. Powerful ending for 50 years. These men carried a secret instead of recognition. They built an illusion so convincing that an enemy army mistook painters, actors, and engineers for a force of tens of thousands. Nearly 80 years after they landed in France, that recognition finally came. In 2022, President Biden signed legislation awarding the unit the Congressional Gold Medal. 2 years later, on March 21st, 2024, Congress presented that medal in a ceremony at the US Capitol, with only a handful of the unit's surviving veterans left to receive it in person. They didn't win by being stronger than the enemy. They won by making the enemy believe in something that was never there, and by trusting real soldiers' lives to that belief. That is the story of the Ghost Army, the unit that was never really there. Remembered at last for everything it actually did.